is Maaike speaking from Kopperberg. I am the editorial content director of the Orphan Drug Summit, and today I would like to share with you some research that we conducted on the orphan drugs ecosystem. So here at Kopperberg, we conducted a survey to map the orphan drug stakeholders and to get some insights into this ecosystem. The orphan drugs ecosystem has shown to be very complex due to the large amount of stakeholders that is involved. And so far, no research can be found that maps the stakeholder interactions. So we believe that these interactions are very intense and that collaboration is so essential within the development of orphan drugs. That's why we decided to do this survey. As you can see on this slide here, there are 8 main stakeholder groups involved in the orphan drugs ecosystem. First, we have the regulatory bodies, which are responsible for the regulatory framework around the orphan drugs development and the actual implementation of the drug. Then we have the payers, who are responsible for the reimbursement of most of the costs for the patients. The drug developers, which are usually biotech and pharma companies, which range from small size to big sized. Industry associations and patient organizations that are there to ensure that the needs of the patient side are listened to. The venture capitalists that invest in the drug developers, hospital representatives, and the researchers. So all these groups that I just mentioned are in some sense interconnected and dependent on each other. What we wanted to find out is actually how they are interconnected. So here at Kopperberg, we are dedicated to create a platform that brings together all these stakeholders within the ecosystem to collaboratively advance orphan drugs. So to create this platform, we need to understand these interconnections. And in order to find that out, we conducted a small survey that asked 2 very simple questions. First of all, we asked, what stakeholders in the orphan drugs ecosystem do you directly interact with? So with this question, we are trying to map the ecosystem as it is now and how it functions right now. With the second questions, what stakeholders would you like to meet or get in contact with, we would try to find out what connections are currently missing and should be empowered by different platforms like ours. So with over 150 respondents, we were able to measure the current interactions and the wanted interactions, and we translated these measurements into an interaction matrix. So what we measured is the percentage of respondents answering that they currently have a direct interaction with a certain stakeholder group, and the percentage of respondents answering that they want to have interaction with a certain stakeholder group. So based on these percentages, we prioritized interactions. So for instance, more than 60% of respondents say that they wish to have an interaction with another. Then we prioritize this interaction as high, and we visualize this with the color pink. Percentages between 50 to 60% are labeled as a medium priority and labeled as a yellow color. And the percentages between 20 to 50% are labeled as a low priority, and those are shown in green. Everything below 20% is seen as a too low need for further analysis, so that will be taken out of account in this research. So we have this interaction matrix here, but now we need to translate this into a bit more concrete actions. So in order to do this, we implemented an approach that is used within software writing, and it will enable us to work with a higher amount of complexity. So what we did here is we translated the interaction matrix into requirements. So I will address one example here, which are the survey results of the regulatory bodies. So for instance, when we look at requirement 1.0, we can see in the interaction matrix that regulatory bodies would like to meet with other regulatory bodies. And this is marked with a medium priority. So this is an example of stakeholders that would like to meet with their peers. In requirement 1.1, we can see that regulatory bodies would love to meet payers. And here we can see that there's here a need for a one-sided interaction, because when we look at the payer side, they do not necessarily want to meet with the regulatory bodies. So these insights will help us with the mapping of the stakeholder needs, and we translated those directly into suitable sessions at the Orphan Drug Summit. When there is a mutual interest for interaction, for instance in requirement 1.2, where we see that drug developers would like to meet regulatory bodies, but regulatory bodies would also like to meet drug developers, we see that there is a more interactive need from the audience between those two groups. So to make the requirements in the interaction matrix a bit more graphical, we created maps for each stakeholder. So as you can see here, we mapped the question, what stakeholders do you directly interact with, for the regulatory bodies. So here you can see a high intensity between regulatory bodies and patient organizations, and from payers to the regulatory bodies. So the size of the arrow actually represents the intensity of the interaction. But you will see soon that when we switch to question 2, when we ask about the needed interactions, that the map looks completely different. So here we have the map of the stakeholder interactions that are wanted, and we see a shift from interest. So now the emphasis is more on the industry associations and the drug developers. So apparently there's a need from the regulatory bodies to meet more with these two stakeholders.
So what do these outcomes mean for you? I just discussed only a case example of the regulatory bodies, but of course we've mapped all 7 other stakeholders as well. So if you're interested in hearing these results, just go to our website, which is shown here below, download the full survey report, and of course don't forget to download our first draft agenda for the conference to see what we have in store for you. A little bit more about this conference. It's going to take place in September in Copenhagen, and it's going to be all about collaboration and fostering the right relations and bringing together the right stakeholders. So now you've seen how we created this agenda and how we actually mapped the stakeholders to create the right sessions for you. Please feel free to comment on our survey, give your input, send us your research papers that could be interesting for this conference, and just email me at this address below. Thank you for watching and hope to see you next time.